So I thought I'd do something different for the task 3 as encouraged by Suzanne. So I thought I'd do a video for this one. Now, was going to do something on gamification and something very professional, but as soon as I read the first 3 paragraphs of the Calantzis and Cope text 2012, I instantly knew what I wanted to do for this. And so I'd already decided I want to do a video for this particular task. So this actually makes it even better because what I want to discuss in this topic is very dear to my heart, and I think it will come out better in a video, and some of it will be too embarrassing to type as well. So the task was around that the concept of knowing and knowledge. How do we learn things, and what is knowledge? So it's such an interesting topic, and I want to discuss my knowledge and appreciation of Aboriginal culture. So some of the things that I once felt certain about, but then I'm hoping this hits the mark, but then became not so sure about. So just a couple of dot points of my background. I grew up in southwest Sydney until I was about year 7. Don't have any memory of seeing or knowing or meeting any Aboriginal people before I left Sydney. Moved to Armidale, which is a very rural gentry town of fine wool growing country up in the highlands, and it likes to think of itself as it's a university town. I grew up on a farm with some very proud parents of their being in the rural town, and very strong national voters. I grew up listening to my parents talking about Aboriginal people being dole blotches, just get a job. The only Aboriginal people I saw downtown were a couple of people that were, drunk or on the corner, homeless. I went to Badal High School. I a very practical person, as in I excelled at maths and science. Things are either wrong or right. The answer's wrong or it's right. I didn't do so well in English, where it's more subjective. I was arrogant, of course, at this age. I had probably one encounter I can remember. This is the stuff that's embarrassing for me to talk about now and admit. I think I remember meeting and seeing Aboriginal kids once when I was at high school in Armidale, and I was in about year 11 or 12, so I was a senior and a leader. So there was 2 young girls that looked about year 7, year 8, Aboriginal girls, and one was crying and holding her arm, and the other one was comforting her. And they were on the move. They were going somewhere, I don't know, up to the nurse or front office or something. Anyway, and I thought I did the right thing, and I said, are you okay? Do you need any help? And the one that was comforting her looked up at me and just said, fuck off. And for me, this is probably the first time in my life, which again is embarrassing to me, that I've spoken to an Aboriginal person that I'm aware of. And for me, that just confirmed my bias that I had my whole life up until this point, that there was no point engaging, and this was how they behaved. It's so hard for me to admit that now. But this was how I was. I knew things. I knew what I knew. I learnt that from my parents and from my upbringing and from my lack of experience. I headed off to UNE, started rural science, as all good rural gentry girls do, and men, and I sort of changed my career to science, and ended up coming out of that, met my husband at uni. He's off the land as well, family from Lightning Ridge, with very similar views to my own parents, and his own upbringing was very similar. In 1995, we moved to Grafton. I was for my husband's work. He's a science teacher at the local high school and has been there ever since. So I think it's 95. So we're coming up to nearly 25 years. So we've been 26, 27 years we've been in Grafton. Once we got to Grafton, we turned up. Grafton, there's people that continue with those views, that knowledge, that learning There's no doubt about it. This is still quite a rural town, but there's also quite a blend of um, of different people in this town. It's just a different vibe as well, probably influencing from our work colleagues. We were still young, we were cocky and arrogant. We told people, you just get a job. This is what we know about Aboriginal people. They don't want to work. I'm just disgusted, really, at some of the things I had said at that time of my life to other people. Started influencing and debating some of the statements with colleagues. People would rebut some of the statements we were saying, that we knew. This was our knowledge. This is our experience and our knowledge on these issues. Developed a real interest in wildlife caring. Fast forward 5 years from that time, to about 2000, and my knowledge and interest in wildlife took me into national parks. Applied for a job at national parks as an eco tour guide. I couldn't even tell you at the time when I got that job as a eco tour guide leader, I couldn't tell you the local Aboriginal mob, the community here, which again is so embarrassing. Then my experiences and what I had happen once I got there changed what I thought was my knowledge and my learnings. I learnt an incredible amount in a very short time, and I am so grateful for that time in my life. I spent 12 years at national parks, came back to TAFE after that, and while I was at national parks, I ended up becoming a ranger as well. I met and learnt so much from the Aboriginal elders in the community. I was shared stories from Aboriginal women elders in the community. They told me stories. They shared traditional medicines with me, showed me plants that do this, ease pain, stop stinging, aborticants, even things like this. I sat with elders, men in the local national park on the coast, and listen to stories of importance and history in those areas. Just life-changing experiences. I'm a science person. Ghosts don't exist. I'm harking to Tim Minch, and I'll come back to that, but ghosts don't exist. So that's just black and white. So they don't exist. It's not magic. I have been, during that period while I was at national parks, I can remember at least 3 times where I was like deep into the national park in the bush, and I would often just head off with my GPS and in a map in one direction. I just wanted to go that way and see. You would come across a plant or a rock or carvings, anything. So that was something I really enjoyed to do on a particular day. At least 3 times during that period, I would find myself, I would just get to a location where I would have this amazing sensation run over me, and even as I say it, even now, and I recall it, the hairs on my neck stand up when I even think about it. And the feeling that I would get was just, I would think, I'm not supposed to be here. I have this incredible feeling wash over me like nothing I'd really felt before. I would then go back and research or ask the elders, or we've got archives, and look up maps and things from cultural archives, and every single time it was either a men's place or a place of sadness, which is often where a place like a massacre has taken place, and I wasn't meant to be there. I didn't know that. So I'm probably emotional just because of my embarrassment of what I used to think and say to people, but I'm also very humbled for my experiences. One time, even at night, I was out cane toading, picking up cane toads, and I was with we'd go out in a group of 5 or 6 people, and they'd drop me up one end, and this is up Yirrigi National Park and up near Yamba, drop me up one end, and they'd drive up to the other end, and I'd walk along this road in the dark with a torch and meet them up the other end because they did one part. And I remember one night, that was probably the 3rd time I remember, and I could hear voices. I got the feeling and this was the first time I'd heard voices, but there was no one there. Like you knew it wasn't just someone behind a bush saying something. It was just this surreal experience that I just got on my mobile and I rang the crew and I said, "Come and get me, just come and get me." And they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Just come and get me." And I couldn't even explain to them what had happened. So anyway, I have also witnessed during that time, I'd be up on level 3 in the state government office block, and I'd be facilitating a national park committee meeting, and it was of the representatives of the community, and we would have one Aboriginal representative because that was written into the thing, and I would see the other members, and could just as well be my parents or me 20 years ago, and rolling their eyes because the one Aboriginal representative was late, and I remember just realizing how hard it was for this person to come up at level 3 into this all white committee and be the token person, and how challenging that would be. And I remember thinking, I wonder how I would feel, or Barbara would feel with the pearls and the collar up, going over to the land council meeting over in South Grafton with the largely Aboriginal community there, and just recognising that's the feeling for that person as well. So I went to a training session coming back to TAFE after 10 years, and I remember it was a cultural awareness one. We all had to do it. I wanted to do it. By this stage, I was a changed person, really. And I remember the presenter saying, most of us were in tears when he said it. He said, he's a very well-dressed man. He said, I get up in the morning and I shave and I look in the mirror and I think, I wonder what it will be today. What will it be today that reminds me that I'm black and I'm different? And that was such a powerful statement as well. From this stage, I was back at TAFE, and so the cultural awareness in national parks among staff is, obviously generally very high. There's work very closely with the community, and with the land as well. And there's a really positive employment now of Aboriginal people in that area. Coming back to TAFE, obviously it's not as high just because of the percentage of courses and population really too. So, but there's a lot of great work and a lot of great people. So I had to reflect on what has changed my understanding, my original understanding, and I sort of made some dot points of exposure, experience, becoming open and accepting to new information. Though, like when you're in that mindset, you don't listen to anything else because what you know, and you've had it confirmed once. So I think once you get that openness and you start researching and becoming interested in that topic and wanting to learn more, it's a change of mindset. So learning what confirmation bias is, and then realizing that that's what's impacting a lot of people's impressions in that area as well. I always liken it's a similar thing to sustainability too, and any of these things where you develop a new awareness it's like blinkers coming off. You can never go back. You can't go backwards, and that's why the part of the question that said, could you understand and become unsettled again, and how? Yes-ish, as far as, but I don't want to go back to what I was. I'm so embarrassed of what I was saying and things I felt and thought and said and acted. But what I've learned is to be open-minded and to listen and to be open to those new experiences, to have some similar things. So I think listening instead of making statements disguised as facts. And again, that Tim Minchin video on Storm was an interesting one. So the way the knowledge is affected by my learning in the master's degree, sorry, I'm ranting on, but it was a great topic. Thank you. I remember when I was at TAFE before I went to national parks, so quite a long time ago, and we ran aquaculture workshops, and we ran 3 block workshops, and aquaculture was a new industry. And the first workshop, all of the farmers would come thinking they knew everything about aquaculture. Just puts fish in the dams, fine. And they would go away from that week workshop realizing they knew less than they thought they knew. And for us, at that first, it was a year-long course, that was the first block. For us, that was the positive outcome, that they would go away realizing they didn't know anything as much as what they thought they knew, and that there was so much to learn about that topic. So I remember that as well. I think being open to new information, even if it challenges my values and beliefs, and that's what I love about doing formal study like the Masters, or even informal study and discussing with people things, listening to other people's experiences. So that lifelong learning and listening is probably part of my development of learning and understanding how people learn and understanding what knowledge is connecting with peers and being open to new knowledge and new ways of learning. So the knowledge relativism that was mentioned in the text talked about that. That's what as soon as I saw that challenge, unsettling the convictions of modern knowledge in the text, I just went, absolutely, that the words pretentious and conceit and one-sidedness were mentioned there. And that then after, when I watched this, Tim Minchin, who I love Tim Minchin, but I watched that and I was like, Tim, I'm with you, but that's exactly what it's talking about there. Even though storm, I know I'm in Northern Rivers, I know a lot of storms as well, and I don't believe in a lot of that. But then again, I can see that Tim there, it's that same thing. So that I like the mentioning of the third way of knowing there that was talked about in the text, about the knowledge repertoires, where you can do a variety of things to know. And I am quoting here, the wider the range of things you do, and that more mixture of all those different things together is actually building that knowledge. And that's what I feel I've experienced with that cultural awareness. So coming back to TAFE, I actually, before I come back to that on that knowledge relativism, I've got the most beautiful story probably to end on. Is Uncle Ron Heron was a Yagle elder that I was fortunate enough to meet. He passed away about 5 years ago, and Uncle Ron told me a story where he was a very well-spoken man and very well regarded in the community, and the Anglican priest, I think they're called, sorry, the Anglican priest was very forward, very open to other knowledge and interests as well, very, very, very well-regarded person in the community too. And he had invited Uncle Ron to dinner with, it's about 10 people, dinner party. And Uncle Ron told the story of the witch called Durangan, which is a Yagle Bundjalung story of how the Clarence River started. And Durangan is this witch, and she's, there's a spring up at Bayugal, and she gets angry and taps, it flows over, and that's how the river and the mountains formed in the Clarence Valley. It's a very, very very famous and important story for the local Yagle, Bundjalung, Angumbangia people. And he told that story, and he said, and the pastor's wife looked at me and said, well, that's not true. She said, that's not where the Clarence River starts. The Clarence River starts up at blah, blah, up, in the catchment. And I just still remember Uncle Ron was explaining, he said, and I looked at her and I said, I'm not stupid. I do know where the Clarence River starts. He said, but this is a story that's really important to my culture and to my community. And I think that just as Noah with the ark and the two of every species is to you and your culture. And it was such a powerful story as well to realise, to degrade or I'm trying to think of the right word, to denigrate and look down that conceitedness of Western society at those stories of the Dreamtime is insane compared to the stories of our cultural heritage, and that is once you see the similarity there, you realise how arrogant and conceited that is. So really spoke to me, the text there. Now I'm back at TAFE, sorry, wrapping up. I now am looking for opportunities where I can, not, when it comes up, if I see something, or I can gently support Aboriginal colleagues if they aren't being treated equally in the workplace, or, even if it's not completely inappropriate, I'll step in, or report things, but also assisting non-Aboriginal colleagues probably more than anything to grow their own cultural awareness, but in a gently way. I've got two quick examples. One was we have a young, relatively young Aboriginal person has in our senior leadership team now, which is great. But everyone's very excited about this Aboriginal person which anyway. That everyone is trying, and that's what's important. You understand their knowledge is only what they know and what they've learnt, just like I was at 20 years old. I have had two instances. One where someone in the leadership team, we are meeting virtually. We're across all of New South Wales. There's probably 15 people in the meeting, and one said, I'm going to call him Bob. One said, okay, we do an acknowledgement of country at the start of every meeting in TAFE. We do that whether it's virtual meeting or if we're on campus and in a room. And so one of the men had said, we need Bob to do a welcome to country at the start of every meeting because he's Aboriginal. And I didn't say anything at the time. I didn't raise it because I didn't want to embarrass that person who would genuinely felt that was the right thing. But what I did was I could see how uncomfortable Bob was, and he didn't say anything. But what I did was I messaged the secretary, and then I also spoke. I said to the secretary, I just need to let you know that that's not appropriate. It's putting that person on the spot. Welcome to country is a very different experience from an acknowledgement of country, and it sounds silly what I'm saying when I'm saying it like this, but I spoke to Bob afterwards, and he was so appreciative that I had actually sort of addressed it. So yeah, it's something that but not embarrassing somebody. But another time, someone asked Bob, "What's the Aboriginal word for virtual meeting place?" So we can have one. We can have one word that for all of us meeting across all of New South Wales. And I could see Bob was like, "Oh, I'll check in with the local community and see what they think." And I I was up for acknowledgement of country the next meeting, so I just slipped into the acknowledgement. We often do a little fun fact, which is great because it's trying to build that awareness of everyone. And I learned some great stuff always still. And I actually just slipped in a map of New South Wales with all of the different language groups and said, hey, did the acknowledgement of country. And then I said, and a fun fact, I live at the juncture of three different language groups and three different Aboriginal language groups, and there's over 70 languages, Aboriginal languages in New South Wales alone, and that was my fun fact. And it never got raised again, so I wasn't hitting anyone over the head of it. I hope I didn't offend anyone, but I was just trying to gently build that knowledge in a safe way for people. So I had to finish off. The Storm video was great, and I say I loved him. But I thought when I saw it, I thought maybe Storm has a point. That what I thought was knowledge was merely opinion, and yeah. So thank you. That's my story. Thank you for listening.